So hello and thank you for joining us, class. We're so grateful that you're here. And I assume you're taking this class as an entry-level humanities course, meaning that it will fulfill humanities requirements for your degree. We're grateful you're here, and today you're studying art history with us. So we will do a quick review of what we will be studying all semester long. This is the course on the AOA arts, the arts of Africa, Oceania, and the Americas. The arts of the continent of Africa, the ocean of the Pacific, or the region also known as Oceania, which is 1/3 of the world, believe it or not, and the arts of the Americas, North America, Central America, and South America. So let's move forward. So our perspective on history and humanity really is fundamentally tied to aesthetics, to our visuality, to how we see the world, how we see history. A huge part of what we do here in studying art history, and you as scholars of humanity, history, art, and art history, is understand where these peoples and cultures come from. So a big skill that we do here is geography. You will learn geography from all over the world, things that you didn't know, things that I didn't know, things we will teach each other. I'm really excited for you to be mindful and open to all of the new language that we will learn about surrounding geography of the regions that we're studying. So Africa is a continent 3.5 times the size of the United States. It has somewhere like 55 to 56 countries. We are learning a lot of new words just in Africa. Like I said, Oceania is 1/3 of the world. Maps usually cut it off, but it's actually 1/3 of the world. We will learn so many new countries and cultures and peoples. It really is like learning a new language. And same, we might be a little bit more familiar with some of the language surrounding the arts of the Americas, North, Central, and South America, just because we live here. But we also have online students from all over the world. So if you don't live here, if you don't live close to Mesa College, that's okay. We're all going to learn together the geography of the world. So one thing we are often introduced to art history is through the height of Western art. And we're introduced to art this way as if it begun this way, right? So up here we have the Sistine Chapel by Michelangelo and the Vitruvian Man by Da Vinci. These are famous artists from the Renaissance. The height of Western culture. And this is really the canon that we know and see and have come to love that is associated with art history. But when I was a young student in college, I kept asking, yes, yes, professor, yes, yes, professor, I understand. You're showing me the art of Europe. But if we're looking at a globe, what about the rest? Show me the rest. What happened in Asia? What happened in Africa? What happened in the Americas, in the Atlantic, in the Pacific, in the North, and the South? What about the rest of the world, right? Well, it turns out other people were asking that too. And here in America, after World War II, the colleges opened up and people were able to study in a way that they had never studied before. So really in the 50s, 60s, 70s, here in America and in Europe, academics started to study the art of the rest of the world. And one of the famous people that they began to study was Picasso. He'd been studied, you know, for decades, and he is clearly the most famous artist in the world. I doubt people recognize him. This is a photo of the young Picasso. Pablo Picasso is from Spain, and he's a child of the new century, and he is educated in the new century. the 1900s. And he goes and he studies at some of the best institutions for art. He can paint, draw, sculpt in such realistic manner that it would blow all of our minds. But this painting is his most famous because he was with a school of artists that created Cubism. This painting is called Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, and he was able to create Cubism through his fascination with African art. So it's not just realism that evokes the highest level of art and humanity, but once we can sculpt and paint and draw realistically, do we maybe want to say something else with our art? And this is what Picasso and his generation of artists really tapped into. So you'll see this most famous painting, one of the most reproduced all over the world. And you can see in the figure to the right, that woman is clearly wearing an African mask. And the woman below her clearly has un-Western features, right? She is not this Caucasian nude reclining. She has cubistic features. Her eyes do not match. Her nose does not match. She's asymmetrical. What is going on here? What could Pablo Picasso have been inspired by to create this beautiful painting? And by the way, some of his critics, I think this painting was done in the 1930s, said that he would be found hung behind it. That's how revolutionary art can be. That's how revolutionary this brilliant, brilliant academic and painter and artist, that's how far he was pushing the boundaries. He was revolutionizing the art. Now there are no boundaries on art. There is no canon. Art can be as we see it, whatever we want it to be. There's landscape art, there's conceptual art, you know, there's virtual art now. But back in this time, it really was a classical movement, and Picasso was breaking that open. So let's see what inspired him so. This is Picasso to the left as a young man, and Picasso to the right. This is the cover of a book called Picasso's Collection of African and Oceanic Art, Masters of Metamorphosis by Peter Stephan. So it is published by Prestel, which is a great book. They publish book company. They publish wonderful things, but certainly in the world of non-Western art or AOA art, I'll use those two words interconnectedly. I prefer AOA art. It really describes the art of Africa, Oceania, and the Americas. But the scholars before me had used in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s the term non-Western art, meaning the opposite of Western art, the opposite or different than the heights of European art. And in a way it is, and in a way it isn't, because here we have the height of Western art, Pablo Picasso, and what does he have himself surrounded by daily that inspires him? Yes, that's right. He had a collection, his own very own collection that he collected from all over the world of African, Oceanic, and Native American artworks. So in the first picture of him to the left, the young picture of him, there are two New Caledonian figures. Those pieces are from the Pacific, Oceania. And here, as an older man, he has a beautiful, beautiful Marquesas Island figure, also from Oceania. You can see some of the cubistic faces and forms coming out, some of the structure, some of the hard stances mimicked in his artwork. How interesting, right? I don't want to focus on non-Western art, on AOA art, as through the lens of Western art. I really want to introduce you all as scholars and students to this art on its own merit. It was some of the first art in the world. We as humans stood up and walked out of Africa. We're all African. Our ancient ancestors came from Africa. So this is the art of the people who stayed behind. As our culture of humans migrated through the Middle East, through Asia, through the Native Americas, through Europe, and evolved in how they thought and treated each other, wrote, sang, danced, and created art, as all of this evolved, this is the art of people who stayed behind. And I use that word evolved very specifically. I don't mean that this art is less evolved and Western art is more evolved. That is a debate that goes on amongst art historians, unfortunately. And the truth is, this art is so incredibly pure and has such brilliance behind it. We can see it in its traditional forms, we can see it in its modern forms, and we can see it in its contemporary forms, in its global forms being exhibited now. So I'm eager to explore it with you. Okay, so here we have two of Picasso's works. And these are honed in, and this is an African mask that inspired his work on the top. And you can see the asymmetrical glance or whimsical nature that this mask evokes and that his painting evokes. And down at the bottom we have a painting by Pablo Picasso and a fang mask from the Gabon. And we can see the simplicity in form, the similarities in the eyebrows, the similarities in the long structure of the nose, in the glance and glare and gaze of this man who is looking deep into the viewer's soul, right? We're really getting to something here. There's a mysterious nature that Pablo Picasso was able to capture, and he was in fact inspired by these two masks, by many other African, Oceanic, and Native American works. So here is how I would like you, this is an image from the Khan Academy. This is how I would like you to think of our class, of your studies in art history. I would like you to see the images of the cultures coming through in their geography. I would like you to take a global approach and imagine the globe and the culture's relations with each other. It's a very visual process, so go there with me. We're going to expand enormously. And you can see here on the left, there's a Native American mask filling all of North America, large Canada, large Alaska, and North America. And then as we go into Central and South America, the artworks change to represent the Peruvian cultures, Central American cultures, South American cultures. You can see in Africa, we have a bois mask filling the continent of Africa. That's just one of thousands of masks. And you can see in Europe, we have, it looks like a Renaissance piece, and in Russia and Asia, Asian and Russian pieces filling those continents. I want you to link the visual nature of each work of art with their geography. That's so important. And I appreciate you going there with me. This is another way for us to imagine art. This is the Metropolitan Museum of Art presenting the Hellebrun timeline of art history. And this is a wonderful way to look at art through a timeline. So we can see 20,000 years ago what was going on in Africa and in Ireland and in China and in Alaska at the time, or 8,000 years ago in Egypt and in Assyria, or in year one, right? What was going on in the Middle East, or in Christ's very own backyard, right? We use a Christian calendar, and that's why we have year one, because this is referencing the previous BC, before Christ. Now we use a more common, appropriate term, before Common Era, BCE. And then we also use AD, after death. or ACE, after Common Era. Those are ways to refer